So, hey, Omega Heads! Metal is a Law radio show and YouTube channel has the honor to interview Patrik, Lindgren, guitar player for THYRFING. So, welcome, Patrik. Thanks for your time. And my first question is, three new singles were released recently from the upcoming album Vanguard, to be released in August 27th, 2021. The first called Dope Dem I Eld, released in March 19th, was most probably the most surprising one for the most of the people who were not expecting a record after 8 years of a pause. Am I right? How was the feedback of the audience critics for this first single?
Yeah, you're right. I guess for some people it might have come like out of the blue. We had hinted about it. We had hinted about the new album coming, posted some recording photos from last summer, but yeah, those doesn't always reach everyone. So maybe for some people it just came out of nothing. So the feedback was very good, I would say. We are not a band who are really used to doing singles and videos. This is our first ones, actually. Back when we did the last album was in 2013, and maybe back then it wasn't. I mean, of course, bands were doing it, but it was not as important as it seems to be today to do singles and videos before the album. Today is pretty much the standard thing of doing. You have to do it. So we don't really have much experience about this thing. So it was not an easy task to choose out the tracks that we're going to put out before the album. We felt the album was incredibly strong throughout. We love all the 8 songs, and yeah, so it was really hard to choose. And I think in the end we actually went with our label's recommendations on the songs, because we could just we felt it was a hard choice. So you can always think back and forth, like, was this the right track, and so on. But for me personally, I've always been an album guy, and when we did the album, we think of it really as a whole unit. All the 8 songs together, and the transitions between them, and the song order, and the dynamics, so on. But yeah, for the single, of course, it was interesting in a way to try it out for the first time and put it out. And it seems the feedback was very good on the first song. It's I wouldn't say it's a really typical THYRFING song comparing to the catalog of our last 3 or 4 albums, but it still has some elements that should be familiar to people. It's really up tempo, and it's really not really no slow parts in that song. It just goes on, dun, 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 dun. And so I guess people were a bit not shocked, but like, oh yeah, this was quite an aggressive and up-tempo track. So I think it went good, and it also had a great produced video directed by Patrik of Revolver, which was also our first official music video ever, which turned out really great, I think. So yeah, it was a good single release and a good reception, I think.
Yeah, cool. So you're the third second single released in May 14th, followed by Yearn Hunt, third single released around 2 weeks ago, and we are on June 24th, 2021. Also have beautiful video clip productions. So could you speak about each one of the 3 singles and giving us some more information about them related to the video production and the idea behind them?
Yeah, the second one we did was Yuguda, which is quite a different song compared to the first one. This is really slow, moody, and a bit more epic. So quite a big contrast in songs between the first and the second one. For this one, we didn't have traditional music video, but more like an animated, I don't know what you call it these days, visualizer, something like that, which were some animated parts from the cover artwork for the single, which was made by Niklas Sundin, who made all the illustrations for the singles on the album. And yeah, it got some great reception as well, I would say. Maybe those who weren't really into the first track like this one a bit more. So I think it might have been a good way to showcase that there are really different moods and on the whole album. Then for the third one, Järnhand, which, as you said, was released only 2 weeks ago from now, was more up tempo again, a bit more aggressive and gritty, and maybe the one of the singles who are most in style with the later THYRFING albums. So maybe that was a bit of a reassuring tracks for some people if they had any doubt from the first two ones. This also had a video directed by Patrik for Revolver, which was, I think it turned out amazing as well. So now we did our first 3 videos. We did them in 6 months' time, and I think they all turned out really good, actually.
Yeah, definitely. So what can we expect about the new album, Vanguard, to be released by Despot Records, which, by the way, has the pre-orders available on the Bandcamp of the band and also available in the description of this video?
Yeah, it will be released in a couple of different formats and bundles. It will be a digipack, which for the CD version, which we haven't seen it in our hands yet, but I think it will be really beautiful and quite a luxurious digipack product, actually. And there are also a couple of different vinyl versions with gatefold and lyric sheet and so on. So I don't have the actual physical packaging right now, but from the print files, it looks it's gonna be amazing, I think. When it comes to the actual album, yeah, it's I would say it's a fantastic album, actually, and it should be, since it was 8 years since we did the last one before. So I would say it's yeah, it's definitely the one that we put most time and effort and energy into. It's been a really long road in terms of writing and recording and producing and with all the details around it. And yeah, as you can tell from the singles, even though it's been quite some time since we had a proper musical output, people should definitely recognize the band. And I think we really managed to capture things from all our previous albums throughout all the years. And yeah, it's and as I said earlier, it's a really strong unit from start to finish, I would say. So I think that it will, when people have heard all the 50 minutes of music, it's gonna feel a bit, I think it's gonna feel shorter than 50 minutes and like, let's put it on again. Hopefully.
Yeah. Cool. So could you speak more about the artwork chosen from Vanguard album?
Yeah, it's the title Vanagander. It's an alternative name for the mythological creature called Fenrir from the Scandinavian mythology, which is obviously a creature that's been used a lot in the metal music when it comes to artwork and shirts and so on. So when we decided for the title and realized we needed to have something connected to that, it felt like quite a challenge actually to not make it look like something that you would buy on any shirt and on any market or something like that. So we tried a lot of ideas back and forth. We even had different artists involved, and then finally we ended up with Niklas, who we worked together with for some 20 years ago for the Von Sinnesvisor album, where he did a great job. And I'm not sure actually why we never worked again since that. But yeah, now this time it worked out for everyone, and he was available and up for it. And yeah, we had a really good communication about it, and tried out some different ideas. And he also did, as I said, for all the artwork for the single releases and the animations for that. So yeah, it's supposed to be this really powerful, striking image with this kind of beast without making it too much like your everyday wolf on the cover.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I'm happy about it. I think it's powerful and striking, but it's also very detailed. So it should look good on bigger formats such as vinyls or posters, or even bigger than that. So I hope people get the chance to see it in detail also, not just as a thumbnail on their phone.
Yeah. Good. And why was there a hiatus of 5 years between the release of Hell's Fight in 2008 and De Ödeslöse in 2013? And then once again, before the release of the new Vanguard album?
Yeah, I suppose we are slow workers. We're the Stanley Kubricks of metal. No, but there are many reasons behind it, and nothing really interesting or spectacular, I would say. We're not doing this band for a living, working 8 hours a day with it. It's something that we do when there is time and motivation and inspiration for it. And yeah, but when you have this setup and you get older, everybody's got probably less time for each year for putting into the band and the creative process. And but yeah, I agree. 5 years is probably acceptable, but 8 years, it's not. It's not a situation that we're really happy about, I would say. So hopefully we can in the future put up the speed a bit and get it done in a shorter time. But on the other hand, it also gets harder each time to do something that measures up to what you've done before. And as I said, we have this is not what we're making our living out of, so we don't have to do any decisions out of from a business perspective or someone telling us what we have to do at a certain time. So I would rather not put something out for a few years than put out something a bit half-assed, which doesn't really measures up to what we want to release. And I mean, there are obviously hundreds of releases every Friday, and I think if we've done this for so many years and done so many albums, and if we're going to do new stuff, I think it's going to be something really special. And,
for sure.
But
and I believe all the fans will also agree with that and accept. And
yeah, hopefully. And as I said, there are a lot of releases coming out every week. So yeah, it's a big mass that you should try to pierce through with. So yeah.
Okay. So the name THYRFING was taken from the sword THYRFING, which is cursed blade that appears in several Scandinavian tales and myths. Was that the first option for the name of the band, or were there others? And why did you decide for this one?
We decided on it pretty early. I think we had some different names that we had for like a week or something. Then we found out there was another Swedish band having it. But we found this name, which was kind of unique. It's not something that the common man in Sweden knows what it is or what it means. And then we also added the H to the spelling. It's originally spelled just TYRFING. Then at least we had something unique to it and knew that, if we find this spelling somewhere else, then we know they've taken it from us. So I would say, at least within the first months that the band was up and running, we've had this name. So
good. And back to the old days, you were creating a new style of metal called Viking metal. So were you aware of it? I mean, was there an intention of creating something new, or just a natural expression of your art?
I don't think we were the ones creating it or that label. There were bands around for sure before who did obviously the Bathory albums in the early 90s were maybe the first one who did this really big Viking concept with a lot of atmosphere. And there were certainly bands before who done it as well, but then it was maybe they had one song about it and then the next song was about a biker or something. But the Bathory albums were really like all in on that concept. Everything, the cover art, the big intros and sound effects and all the lyrics, and just went through. So that was very inspirational from that point of view. Then there were also a part of the ever-growing Norwegian black metal scene who were doing things in that subject as well, especially if you say the label Viking metal. I think it was I first saw it on an Enslaved CD, Frost album probably. So that's where they had written that with big letters in the booklet, and that was probably the first time I really saw that as a label of a music genre. And there were also some other Norwegian bands who started to incorporate the folk-inspired themes, like folk music, and also with the traditional lyrics. That was also a bit of an inspiration for us back then. There were also bands at the same time, some bands in Sweden also started out pretty much the same time that we did. So I wouldn't say that we created a musical genre from that we were really the first ones, but maybe some things that we did served as an inspiration for bands later on. I think we were maybe one of the first ones who incorporated these symphonic elements with a lot of keyboards, which was a bit inspired by could be both film music and film scores, probably some stuff from computer games and so on, which were incorporated into this kind of metal. So I think maybe in that regard, we were one of the first bands who did it, and I think it might have inspired some other ones later on. But I think we already from the start had quite an idea that we should do something a bit original, rather than trying to sound exactly like this or that band. And also the way that we used and incorporated the keyboard parts was a bit unusual, which gave us quite a unique flavor, probably. Many bands who used keyboards back then, they only had it for like effects or background with this big layers of strings and pads. But for us, it was a leading instrument really, which was also an important part of the songwriting, which gave it a bit of uniqueness, I think, rather if you just write everything on guitars, like 99% of the metal bands usually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Good. And what about the live gigs? Will THYRFING be playing live soon?
I don't know. Hopefully as soon as possible, but it's really hard for us to say anything, and it's hard for anyone at this point, I think, to say.
Yeah.
Now it seems that the festival summer is on for 2022. Yeah. But that was also the case if we rewind the tape 1 year back. Then everybody was the festival summer for 2021 was on, but that is off now. So yeah, in practice and with all the, and it's impossible to say right now when it will happen, if it will happen, but I certainly hope so. It seems that things has been started at least in the US, seems to be a bit ahead of us in Europe. From what I can pick up, there are actually shows going on in the US now. And yeah, we'll see about after the summer what happens, but it's not like, at least in Sweden, it's not like we can book a show now for the after the summer and be sure of it happening. If we would book it, it would still be like, yeah, let's see if it happens. We have a couple of festivals which were confirmed before the pandemic, which are postponed. So we'll see when and if those happen. And yeah, it's not easy to book new things right now, because everything is postponed back from 2020. So maybe there are some slots opening up here and there where we can fill in the last minute or something. But yeah, it's for sure very sad and strange situation with the live business now, obviously. So
yeah,
just have to hope for the best and that there's going to be an opportunity soon.
Okay, good. And which equipment do you use, or do you prefer playing live?
Yeah, for when it comes to guitars live nowadays, we're actually using the Camper amps, the German company, because we're not really a touring band with a big budget for equipment and so on. So we're pretty much do fly in, fly out gigs where you have to keep everything as small and mobile as possible. So we're using those Camper amps directly to the front of house, which works really great. I think we've been buying and selling a lot of equipment through the years, but this is probably the ones that really feels like a real tube amp and that works really good. I don't think anyone in the audience can notice any difference really. It's usually the musicians themselves or other musicians who says they can tell the difference, but I doubt they can really. It's more about the feeling, and I think with these feels like real amps, and so we've been using those lately. And for guitars, it's a bit different. Me and Fredrik has been playing some Gibson Flying V's during the last years, but now I'm currently playing the Eclipse model from ESP, which I also used previously. Using the models built in Japan back in the early 2000s. I managed to find a great deal on a couple of those here in Sweden, secondhand. Fredrik has an endorsement deal with Solar Guitars from Ola Englund, which a lot of people are using to nowadays. So yeah, I think that's about it for when it comes to guitars.
Okay. So which are your main metal influences as a musician?
Oh, that's really hard to say, actually. I mentioned a few bands earlier on in the earlier questions. When you start out the band, it's probably easier to tell specific bands and albums that influences you. Nowadays, I think it's almost like you're influenced by yourself and your earlier albums. Like you take some knowledge from what you did earlier. But it's really hard to say any specific bands within metal that influences us nowadays. It's probably small fragments and pieces from here and there. Usually when it comes to metal nowadays, if there are any new stuff that I enjoy, it's if we would be really general, I would say it's bands that may have like a timeless sound. Which is it's something that could have been released in the early 90s, or it could be released now, and you can't really place it in a certain time era, because there are certainly a lot of stuff that might sound really dated if you listen to it nowadays, and it seems like it was really created for a certain time. But I think the great metal albums are those that doesn't really matter when they were made. You can they got a timeless feeling about it.
Yeah.
So that's what I usually.
Do you have any names?
For newer bands, or
No, for old bands, no problem at all.
For old bands, there are obviously a lot of them. Recent times, we have some bands from Sweden, I think, which is one band called Wormwood here from Stockholm, which we are acquaintances with, and which I think they really got their own thing going, and adding some new elements and influences for each album, still having their own integrity, and for each album just taking it a bit further, adding new things but still it's got its own identity in the end. So yeah, I think that's a band worth checking out regarding new stuff.
And what about your musical influences besides metal? Are there any?
Yeah, probably and definitely. But it's same thing there, really. It's hard for me to put anything in particular.
Okay.
I usually, when I listen to music, it's mostly metal, actually. But nowadays I can also enjoy, like, maybe even things that might show up on the radio, in the background. And I can enjoy stuff from many different genres, but when I listen to something as a music fan, like checking out, this album was done there and there, it was produced by him, it has this cover art, the track list look like this. When you get into that level, then it's usually within metal or rock music.
Yeah, okay. Good. And now I have a situation that is like classic here on Matters Law. I ask all musicians. So suppose you are a bad guy, got in trouble, and had life imprisonment as a sentence, and you can have nothing with you but 3 albums that you can listen for the rest of your life, because one of the guards of the prison is a nice guy and give you them as a gift. So which albums would you choose and why?
Oh, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I know.
But if I was in prison, I'd probably take live albums actually. I think that would probably.
That's a smart.
Yeah, because they're usually double albums, and then you get to know. It's gonna get long playing time, but also it's, might be a good feeling actually to hear a live album if you're inside a small cell for the rest of your life, to at least get a sense of
yeah, having people around you at least.
Yeah. So I would probably take something relaxing like a Pink Floyd live album, I think, to get a feeling of harmony and calm, and probably some classic metal live album as well, like Live After Death with Maiden or Metallica live album or something. It'd probably be nice also. And probably maybe a studio album as well, something aggressive might also come handy in that situation. Maybe something like Raining Blood or Altars of Madness. Yeah, that should cover some ground, I think.
Yeah, cool. All right, and now to finish our interview, would you like to leave a message to your fans who are watching and listening to us?
Yeah, I hope that you still remember THYRFING, and that you're up for another album, which is coming after the summer. And in the meanwhile, feel free to check out the singles and the videos, because I think they really deserve it, and it's a good taste of what to come later on.
Okay, great. So thanks again, Patrik. Thank you all for watching and listening to us, and stay heavy.